Verse 11 says, the king's demand is impossible. No one except the gods can tell you your dream, and they do not live here amongst people. No one except the gods can tell you. I agree to an extent. No one except the gods? Not the gods. The God. Our God. No one except the one true God. Amen? Amen. The one true God that can do the impossible. It's impossible, they proclaim. Just like the Israelites did in Exodus 14:21 when they approached the Red Sea while being chased by the Egyptians. It's impossible to cross. Not with God on your side. It's impossible, just like the apostles thought in Mark 6:37-42 when they were asked to feed the 5,000 by Jesus Christ himself with only 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. Not with God on your side. Or with Abraham's wife, Sarah, in Genesis 21:1-7. Or Zechariah's wife, Elizabeth, in Luke 1:18-20, when they gave birth to their children at such an old age. They thought it was impossible. Not with God. Or getting swallowed by a fish in Jonah. Impossible? Not with God. Bless you. Like Samson taking down more than 3,000 people while being chained to pillars and his eyes plucked out of his skull, killing more men when he died than he did during his entire lifetime. Judges 16:28-30. And we all know the story of David and Goliath. 1 Samuel 17. God can help us each and every day, each and every way, through every impossibility when we allow him to work through us. So no matter how much logic they threw at him about his impossible requests, Nebuchadnezzar did not allow anyone to change his mind. Then they say, they do not live amongst humans. They do not live amongst people. They do not live amongst mortal flesh. Does anybody know why? Why they do not live amongst mortal flesh? Anybody? It's because they're not real. It's because they did not exist. That's why. By them saying this statement, they don't live amongst humans. They just expose the limitations from their gods and themselves. And you guys remember what I said just a moment ago? A God with limited power or no power at all is not a God. This right here shows that the astrologers, if anything, they invent interpretations of dreams. This is why they couldn't know more than just the meaning of the dream. That statement, they don't live amongst us, betrays the concept of gods. They're admitting that they have no supernatural powers backing them up. They still believed in their gods, it just made no difference in their wisdom. Nebuchadnezzar is realizing at this point that maybe, just maybe, these guys have been telling him just what he wanted to hear. It's proving to him that his advisors might just be liars this entire time. Soothsayers. Does everybody remember what soothsayers are? Can anybody say what a soothsayer is, Albert?
Basically a fortune teller.
A soothsayer is a false prophet. That's what a soothsayer is. So a fake fortune teller. What do you guys think a hollow religion is? Can anybody guess what a hollow religion is? A hollow means empty. So it'd be an empty religion. Another way of putting it is a religion of convenience. Some people believe in God, our God, but they don't listen to God. They don't fear him. They don't know his word. They don't read the Bible. In a sense, these people believe in God as a hollow religion, a religion of convenience. I would say honestly, it's how I used to be and how I'm really trying not to be. I've shared in my first Bible study how I've walked away from faith. And with knowledge here that I've gained at the ranch, I know now that I've never walked away. I still believed in his existence. But I only prayed or thanked God when it was convenient for me. Usually it was when something bad happened in my life. And even then, sometimes I wouldn't ask for his help. I would just blame him. The truth is that I should pray all the time. Rather than pray when I'm just in distress or in need or when I've hit rock bottom, when it's convenient for me. Because maybe, and just maybe, I wouldn't have ever gotten in those places if I would have just prayed. I believe now to the fullest extent that he does exist. And he does live amongst me. And he does live amongst us. each and every one of us, and he wants to change my life, and he wants to change yours, and all for the better. Verse 12 through 13. The king was furious when he heard this, and he ordered that all the wise men of Babylon be executed. And because of the king's decree, men were sent to find and kill Daniel and his friends. So the king is furious, and why wouldn't he be? The very men whom he trusted to be vessels of the gods in which he believed in are turning out to be frauds, phonies. Men who have been on his staff for years advising him might have been feeding him lies this entire time, betraying his trust. And his solution? Put them all to death, all the wise men. Back in verse 5 of chapter 2, remember he tells the Chaldeans, if you don't tell me what my dream is and what it means, I will have you torn limb from limb and your houses into heaps of rubble. This was his decree. It was his law to kill all the wise men. Now this made me wonder, if he did this, who would be left to advise him? Sure, he could raid lands and capture people, but who would train them? Who would train them similar to Daniel and his friends? Who would even advise him to do those things, to raid those areas? Oh, this would be the best time of day, the best time of year, the best land to raid. These were all things that the wise men were meant for. So if he kills all the wise men, who will be left to advise him? He wouldn't use the men currently in training, and I'll tell you why. The chapter opens up in verse 1 saying, during the second year of his reign. And we talked about how it moves back the chronological sequence. So in chapter 1 establishes a 3-year period of training. So chapter 1 starts with Nebuchadnezzar not only becoming king in 605, also raiding the land of Judah and capturing Daniel in 605. Daniel's training to become one of the wise men would have ended in the year 602 BC, which we already know that he does. He does become a part of the royal service as an advisor 3 years later. But the chapter goes back to the king's second year. So in chapter 1, we know it starts off and it ends after 3 years. But the way that chapter 2 starts, it starts in the second year of his reign. So that means it goes from the beginning 3 years later, and then chapter 2, it doesn't leave off. Chapter 2 goes backwards. So when chapter 2 starts, Daniel would still be in his training. So when he's having these troubling dreams, Daniel is not a wise man. He's a wise man in training. Does that make sense?
Start at 603, or does it start at 602?
Chapter 2?
Yeah.
Chapter 2, so it would either start in 603 or 602 because of how it starts in the accession year. So some people would believe that it starts in 605, which would mean it starts in 603. But if you discount the accession year and start that his first year of reign was in 604, then it would start in 602. So does that make sense? Yeah. So it'd either be 603 or 602. I can't give that answer because even the commentaries and the research that I've done, those researchers and those interpreters did not even have that answer. It went back and forth. And that's why I've learned that it even said in one of the books that I read that it's a common debate, So I can't give that answer. It'd be one of the two. So as I digress, whether Daniel was still in his training or not, the decree would have still included him and his friends, and all their lives would be in jeopardy, whether they were in training or not. Verse 14 says, when Arioch, the commander of the king's guard, came to kill them, Daniel handled the situation with wisdom and discretion. So Arioch, the head of Babylonian FBI, the commander of the king's guard, who was sent to carry out the decree and kill the wise men, comes on scene. Daniel spoke to him. Or actually, Arioch spoke to Daniel, and Daniel was able to speak to him because instead of Arioch coming to straight kill him or seize him, he allowed for conversation to take place, although he was sent to kill him. And Daniel handles the situation with wisdom and discretion, as it says in my NLT. Wisdom and discernment. And in the NIV, does somebody have an NIV version? Can you read verse 15 in the NIV?
He asked the king's officer, "Why did the king issue such a harsh decree?"
I'm sorry, verse 14. I apologize.
When Arioch, the commander of the king's guard, had gone out to put to death the wise men of Babylon, Daniel spoke to him with wisdom and tact.
Wisdom and tact. So, wisdom and tact. Does anybody know what tact means? Tactical? No, I'm sorry, that is incorrect. Skillfully. That's pretty much along the lines. So, it means an intuitive perception, a quick and fire perception of the proper thing to say or do to avoid giving offense. A sensitive skill in dealing with people. So, I like that one. In the NIV, it says wisdom and tact. I learned that and I thought it was interesting. A little bit about wisdom here. Wisdom is a God-given gift. It's a gift from God. And God is the source of knowledge and understanding. And we all know that the beginning of wisdom is, Chris?